And welcome back to 20 Strongest Captain Class Shinigami series. And we are on the 7th, what I consider to be the 7th strongest out of 20 Captain Class Shinigami who we have enough knowledge about to actually do a proper video. And that is Retsu / Yachiru Unohana, the former 1st Kenpachi and former captain of the 4th Division of the 13 Guard Squad. She's definitely, when I was deciding who to put on this list, Unohana was a very, what's the best way to put it, a very difficult one to consider putting on the list, because we saw her Bankai activate, but we were never really given a true explanation on it. If Kubo at least explained, like in a chat, like had Unohana explain her Bankai a little bit to Kenpachi, and it's like, my Bankai can do this and this and this. And it's like, tell me, Kenpachi, can you battle through it? If you are the Kenpachi, should you not be able to defeat someone such as myself? Blah, blah, blah. He could have at least done that, but whatever. It is what it is. He ultimately beat her, which, spoilers, she loses to Kenpachi in a fight. But more importantly, I didn't like, when I originally did this video, I didn't put her on the list because we just didn't get a good explanation of her abilities or whatnot. But when I was going through like the official like Bleach fandom wiki, you know, where people put all the updates on, I saw an actual description for her Bankai. I'm like, okay, and I'm reading, I'm like, yeah, this pretty much makes sense of what we saw. So I decided, using that information, I would use her in the top 20. And then when I actually put her up against everyone, I'm like, oh no, she kicks the majority of the characters' butts in this list. Ranking her 7th out of 20, that's a pretty high ranking. So as the 1st Kenpachi, she was probably the most prolific swordsman in the Gotei 13. Like, except for Kenpachi himself, there was no one else who could beat her in an actual sword fight. She was just that skilled. Her Kido knowledge is deadly. Like, she is one of the oldest and most prolific users of Kido in the Soul Society, particularly Kaido, which is healing Kido, which could be used to the point of not just growing back her hand after being cut off, her fingers after being cut off, a la Wolverine style, that's how strong it was, but literally growing the flesh back on both her and Kenpachi's bones. So yeah, she's pretty ridiculous. Her Shimpo was extremely effective as well. Her strategic nature in battle was probably one of the best in the Gotei 13, being who she was. A murderous lover of battle. She carried knives on her too, surprisingly, which Kenpachi even points out, is like, you're using such tricks. No, it's just last time we fought, you didn't give me a chance to use such tricks. Are you saying I got weaker? Yeah. Her Zanpakuto is actually very unique, in that its Bankai and its Shikai actually share the exact same name, Minazuki, but the name Minazuki changes because the Kajins in its name change from the Shikai to the Bankai. If I remember correctly, Minazuki in Shikai means flesh drop gorge, if I'm not mistaken. And one second, Minazuki. I want to get Minazuki up. I don't have the image up, but I just decided. Was it Minazuki? There we go. So Minazuki's name in its Shikai means, as I get the name up here real quick, it means, I should have had this already at the go. Sorry about that. Yeah, flesh drop gorge. That's what it means in Shikai. And in Shikai, it's very unique. It's one of the only Zanpakuto we've seen that turns into an actual living creature. In fact, it might be the only one we've seen that does that. Because I can't really count Sajin's. It just creates giant limbs. I mean, his Bankai is similar to this, but not in the same way. But it turns into a giant flying manta ray that can sprout a pair of legs to like land. Its abilities apparently are healing ability. It's not a combat-based Zanpakuto in Shikai. It possesses the ability to heal by swallowing individuals who were wounded in its mouth. The stomach acids inside Minazuki then heal and repair wounds. Minazuki can carry at least a half a dozen people, and they are very good. It's very effective at healing. Minazuki's Bankai, however, the Kajin is very much changed, and it just says all things end. When it's released, as you can see in the picture I used for Unohana, this is her Bankai activating, a dark, thick red liquid that seems to sizzle basically comes out of her sword and flows around her vicinity. Once the majority of liquid flows out of the Zanpakuto, the remainder solidify into a shortened katana, which can then be used for combat. It's strong and sturdy enough to clash against Zaraki's blade. Contrasting to the healing stomach acid of her Shikai, the liquid unleashed by the Bankai of Minazuki is a strong acid capable of reducing a combatant as powerful and physically durable as Kenpachi Zaraki to a skeleton in a matter of seconds upon contact. During the battle, Unohana combines this with her powerful, potent Kaido to dramatically increase the speed and process of killing and reviving Kenpachi in order to remove all those mental blocks. Now, that being said, her Bankai also hurts her. She learned Kaido to be able to fight longer and more effectively, which would make sense when you have a kind of a self-damaging Zanpakuto like Minazuki. It makes 100% sense, really. So her Bankai is extremely potent, extremely powerful, but it's not the most powerful Bankai in the world. She clearly isn't the most. She isn't the most powerful, obviously, by my own definition. She still lost to a fair few people, but not let me put it this way. Everyone above her on this list, or close to everyone above her on this list, beat her. So there was at least 6 people who beat her, but pretty much near everyone below her on this list lost to her. Let's get the lieutenants quickly out of the way. Against Hisagi, her acid alone would probably make his healing abilities useless, because it seems to work. Kazushini's healing abilities seem to be focused more on slashing, cuts, gouges, and it basically stitches up with the chain. It doesn't really seem to work. It wouldn't work against something that just reduces him to a skeletal husk. Add on to the fact that she could probably counteract his actual blades in terms of swordsmanship, despite the fact that Kazushini is very tricky. And honestly, I don't know if his Bankai would be enough to counter her Bankai. Honestly, I think what would happen is he gets exposed to the acid, and then he continually keeps burning and melting while healing, quickly draining out the effects of the Bankai, which his Bankai basically seals you in like a dome of chains, connects you and your opponent, and your spiritual energies get connected. Any damage done immediately gets healed, but siphons off that mutual reservoir of Reishi, and eventually you all tire out. Unohana eventually would just kind of come in and, when it's all said and done, probably cut him down with her sword. Against Ikaku, Ikaku wouldn't be able to even go toe-to-toe, sword-to-sword with her, quite frankly. As good of a swordsman as he is, she is just another level of beast entirely. Last but not least, in terms of the non-captains on this list, Renji wouldn't really handle himself well against her either. Just in terms of pure swordsmanship alone, she probably wouldn't even need to use her Bankai against him. She's more than skilled enough to take him on, probably in Shikai. His Bankai she might find amusing, but she would probably just slice the ape hand part of it off, go toe-to-toe with the snake blade, and frankly, she could easily just use Kido to keep him at bay and just keep him in place. So, what was it? Bakudo 63, Ryoju Koro, I believe it is, which is that 5 star kind of rectangles sticking in place technique. But ultimately, let's get into the actual people we're going to talk about on this. So, against the head captain and Ichibe, probably 2 of the strongest in the Soul Society ever. How does she fare against both of them? Well, against Ichibe, I think her swordsmanship, frankly, would be more than capable of going toe-to-toe with Ichibe. Again, the problem going against Ichibe in a sword fight is that damn Ichimonji, even in its sealed state, can cut in half the name of anything it basically hits, taking away half its power. So Minazuki turns into either Mina or Zuki. Even if she's well aware, like her years of battle sense tells her to avoid getting hit by that blade, she's still got to deal with the fact that Ichimonji's black is ability to take all the black off of something is extremely dangerous. It's one of those things where he's so uniquely dangerous that it's not like someone can just go toe to toe with him. And Unohana would very much, as battle hungry she is, she's also not dumb. She's can very well sense when something's off. If she goes Bankai against him, that might pose a problem, but he knows enough about Shimpo and Kido to really keep her at bay. Plus, again, being the monk who knows the true name, he probably knows Minazuki's real name, and might even know what Minazuki does. That's the weird thing about knowing the name, but not being the creator of the Zanpakuto. I feel like Otetsu might know what every Zanpakuto does, whereas Ichibe might know just the name of the Zanpakuto. Either way, he'd still be able to be like, oh, dangerous, okay, and then, throws ink on things and removes its name, and there you go. So I don't think she could win against Ichibe, though I think she could put up a good fight. She's definitely one of the individuals who would be more inclined to give him a decent fight. Against Yamamoto, his flames alone would keep her at bay. Though her Kaido would allow her probably to move, go into the flames, get burned, but allow her to heal herself to actually fight toe-to-toe with Yamamoto. That is one thing I can give her credit for. Her acid isn't going to do shit because he's just going to burn the acid off. Just evaporate it. But in terms of actually, a sword fight between the two of them, no, that could actually happen because her Kaido would allow her to compensate for the severity of the burns that Ryujin Jika would give her. And at that point then, and in a pure swordsman fight, that's actually a tough call, but because it says she was probably the most accomplished swordsman in the Gotei 13. That might even have included Yamamoto. Yamamoto was just overall stronger. That was the difference. So ultimately, if it came down to it, the whole Bankai thing, Bankai to Bankai, he goes Bankai, yeah, then she's done. For all her healing abilities, she can't go up against his Bankai. She'll be incinerated before she could even register trying to heal from it. So against these two, she unfortunately loses. Against Soifone, however, she very much took a comfortable win there. Not that Soifone is depicted as being the fastest of the Gotei 13, but there are certainly characters who rival her in speed. At minute, like Biake rivals her in speed. Isn't as fast probably, but rivals her in speed. Unohana probably would be another one because just of her age and experience. Along with probably Urahara, and because he was part of that the second division too. So Shunpo is something he's definitely got down, or Shunsui. They can rival her in speed, but probably aren't as fast. Unohana is also probably not as versed in hand-to-hand combat, despite the fact she loves combat. That is certainly where Soifone takes a comfortable edge. How unfortunately, when it comes to Soifone, one of Soifone's biggest character flaws is her youth and inexperience, surprisingly. Her youth gives her physical advantages, sure, but she's also very young mentally. She has not matured as a person. And because of that, she suffers in certain scenarios, especially against Baragon, where she was was really hard pressed to get help from Hachi just because he was associated with Urahara. It's girl, you're gonna die. The Gotei 13 and Aizen are gonna take over. Swallow the damn pride and get help. I don't care how much you hate Kisuke. Seriously. Get over it. Soifone really is a character with a stick up her ass. And that's really why I don't like the character. Her abilities are cool, and she's very strong, but I do not like the character that much. So, because of that, Unohana is much older, much more refined, much more experienced. She would definitely not only be able to exploit that personality flaw in Soifone, but her swordsmanship and reflexes are easily on par, if not greater. I mean, swordsmanship is definitely greater. And if we're going Bankai to Bankai, The thing about that is, it actually would kind of be a scenario similar to like what happened when she fought Barga. If the acid hit her hand, she starts to just dissolve, be like, ah! That's kind of how I see that happening. Because even if she tried to use the Bankai against Unohana, guess what? There's a thing called Shunpo. That Bankai, when you really look how fast that was moving compared to how fast we see characters move in Bleach, her Bankai is kind of slow compared to how fast Shunpo really is. There's no evidence, by the way, that missile is a heat seeker. If it was, it'd be a different story. But as far as we know, there's no evidence on that. So when Unohana basically just dodges it, or destroys it, like say with the acid, assuming that it's works on inorganic material, which I don't think it does, because we see with Zaraki and her, their clothes still remain, even though technically cloth is an organic material. I think it really only works like on flesh and living tissue. Ultimately, though, I do think Unohana would beat Soifon in a fight. Ultimately, it could. I mean, would Soifon beat Unohana with a two-step kill? I actually don't even know if that's the case, because as Aizen showed, if you've got enough Ryatsu to overcome it, then it doesn't really do anything. Shinigami battles are a battle of Ryatsu, as he said. So. Yeah, ultimately, I don't know if she's got if Unohana has enough Ryatsu to overpower it. My guess is because she could fight on par with a Kenpachi who already had his eye patch off and was actually still stronger than him at that point. The answer, I think, might be yes. So yeah, that would be my thoughts on that. Against the two third division captains, very similar here. Against Rose. Oh God, Rose. I was thinking of Love. Against Rose, yeah, she would take out Rose pretty quick. Like, the whip doesn't mean anything. She would very much probably just get behind him and cut him. Like, his ego, too, his personality, really wouldn't mesh well against an opponent like Unohana. If he activated his Bankai, Unohana would frankly just honestly, she would do what Master Masculine would do and destroy her eardrums, because she could just heal them later. And then she'd kick his ass hard. Against Gin would be a bit trickier, definitely. But she's a wary enough fighter that I don't know if she would let Gin get the drop on her. Even with Kamishini no Yari, I don't know if he could get the drop on her in that regard. He's definitely tricky, but she's just as tricky and conniving if she wants to be. And she's clearly stronger in terms of swordplay and Ryatsu, plus Kaido and Kido. I think he's just outclassed in this fight. So I'd give that one to Unohana as well. Against Shinji, I just finished reading the second novel in the Can't Fear Your Own World light novel series. And it actually detailed how much Shinji is a lot stronger than, Sakanade is a lot stronger than it gives people give him credit for. Like, Sakanade apparently can it inverts your senses of direction, but he can actually switch it up on the fly. Like, oh, okay, I turned off the left and right, but still kept the front and back. Oh, now I did the other one. And he also can invert words and sounds, and he's trying to learn how to invert hot and cold. Like, what? So yeah, he's a lot stronger than I think people give him credit for. He is actually really strong. However, against Unohana, I don't think it matters. The acid can infect a wide range, so she could just move in a circle with the acid and tag him, and then he's screwed. She is also one of the people that the whole idea of the inverse senses doesn't really matter with a honed combat sense, like Zaraki's or like Aizen being able to figure it out, like Unohana's. So basically, going off of instinct alone should be able to counteract that. Should be noted, too, that Shinji was very afraid of Unohana. Like, most people were afraid of Unohana, including Ukitake and Shunsui. That doesn't mean, though, I think she'd win against Shunsui, and we'll get to that when we talk about that. But ultimately, yeah, Shinji, and his Bankai is useless in a one-on-one fight. So, yeah, Shinji would unfortunately lose pretty hard to her. Against Biake, now that one was an interesting fight to break down. Do I think she'd win against Biake? Again, sword to sword, I'd actually say they're almost even, but she's probably got an edge. Kido to Kido, they're probably even, but with Kaido, she's got the edge. With Shunpo, I actually probably have to go with Biake on that. Hand-to-hand, we don't really see how well these guys handle in hand-to-hand. They don't fight that way usually. There would probably be a lot of back and forth in this fight. But it's really Bankai to Bankai. And the problem for Unohana is that while her Bankai is deadly, his Bankai is the perfect kind of Bankai to keep those effects out of range. Like, he can make so many blades with Zenbonzaku or Kagayoshi that he's honestly wouldn't be touched by the acid, frankly. And even if he did get like touched on the hand, he's the kind of guy who would take off his own hand to stop himself from melting. So yeah, Biake, I actually think would beat Unohana in a fight. It would not be easy, but I do think Biake would win that fight, especially when we talk about it going down to the Bankai. Against Sajin, obviously, if you've seen Sajin video, you know I think Unohana pretty much kicks his ass, especially because him and the Giant connected. He injured the Giant, he injured Komamura, and vice versa. She's also just clearly a more skilled fighter than he is, knows Kido and uses Kido, whereas we just don't know what his Kido skills were like. And he's just too headstrong and loyal, I think. He's a little too blindly loyal, if I'm going to be honest, and that actually really does hurt him in a fight. Because he's so adamant about, serving Yamamoto. Now, okay, I mentioned Shinsui. Let's talk about Shinsui. Shinsui, like Ukitake and like a lot of people, we're scared of Unohana. We saw he was scared of Unohana. He clearly is, wow, I did a weird there. He clearly is someone who, is very respectful of Unohana. And he was made head captain while Unohana was still alive. She wasn't chosen to be head captain. He was. That would, in theory, say that he's overall stronger than she is. And obviously, because he places higher in the list, I do think he is overall stronger than he is. But remember, in these fights, someone who ranks higher could lose to someone who ranks lower, because in that matchup, they did not mesh well. And here, I actually think that is the case. Because the Children's Gate stuff, that's tricky. Like, Unohana would really have to be focusing on that. But she's as old, if not older than he is. So she has the same level of experience he is, and she's a master on the field of combat. So she would definitely be able to, I think, keep up with the games. Again, being as skilled, if not more skilled in Kido than he is, and Kaido, they match each other perfectly. He's as tricky, I think, with swordsmanship, though, because he is ambidextrous and dual wields two different blades. But the question is ultimately Bankai to Bankai. And, the first off, you go with the first Dawn, the wound sharing Dawn. Or the sharing of the wound. They both share each other's injuries. Well, that wouldn't matter because Unohana can heal her own injuries. Then you get the second wound. The disease which causes the blood spread out. Again, Unohana's Kaido and knowledge of healing would probably counter that. And since at that point he's moved on to a second act, we have to assume that the Farmer Act is done. So that's no longer in effect, which makes sense because the whole razor wire thing didn't affect him in the same way. Which means if she goes Bankai at that point, then at that point, Shinsui actually has a problem on his hands. Going to the Dangai Abyss, in fact, where they're going to run out of Ryatsu or drowned, well, that's not going to happen anyway. So then you go to the razor wire cutting thing, and ultimately her Kaido is good enough that the minute her neck gets cut, it's going to heal. And even if it tries to explode, it's going to heal while exploding. So it's very likely she would actually counter that and hit him with her Bankai while doing that. So I actually think she's one of the few people who could have circumvented his Bankai just because of the sheer level of healing she had, which ultimately means I think she'd win in a fight against him. But again, overall, we're looking at the overall spread, and obviously overall spread, he ranked higher in terms of an actual fight. In terms of actual people he won against, I mean. Against both the Squad 9 captains, Akaname Tozen and Kensei Muramuga. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. Yeah, Kensei would not be able to handle Unohana at all, really, at all. His Bankai is too condensed. It's too limited, and she has far more range with her Bankai and Kido, and it's clear he's not very well versed in Kido. And then Kaname is definitely a bit trickier, comes into senses, but just like Kenpachi, she's one of those people who I feel like her innate battle sense would allow her to just be like, oh, I feel the blade coming. Whoops, nope, you ain't gonna hit me. Nope, nope, and then, all right, I'm done. Slice, End of story. So, yeah, against Kensei, he's just too straightforward of a guy to really handle himself well in a lot of these matches. And against Kaname, it's basically the same thing as what happened with Zaraki. Against Hitsugaya, if I remember correctly, I do believe I had Hitsugaya losing because I just did him, if I'm not mistaken. I did have Hitsugaya losing to Unohana. And again, that comes down to experience, her Bankai, her Kido knowledge, and the fact that he, similar to Soifone, he suffers from the fact that he's a very young captain and therefore has not really matured mentally. So ultimately, I would definitely go with Unohana in that fight. Now, we don't really need to talk about Kenpachi that much because we kind of already know how that one went down. But yeah, ultimately, she lost the fight to Kenpachi. Now, that's because she ultimately wanted to lose the fight to Kenpachi because Kenpachi was not fully realized and she felt he was the only one truly worthy of carrying the name Kenpachi. But at the same time, even as a kid, he beat her. Straight up, he beat her. And then then basically, thanks to her, he unlocked her full potential, which was probably even greater than him as a kid, because he now had his Shikai and his Bankai. So at this point, yeah, there's no way she beats Kenpachi in a fight. Just that's the way it works at this point. It's more than likely what it is his Ryatsu, at him fully realized, is strong enough to completely circumvent his her Bankai abilities and her Kido abilities. So that's the way that works. Against Mayuri, that one is a trick, because Mayuri is one of those characters, again, who could honestly beat just about anyone in a fight with enough time. With enough time and prep, he could beat just about anyone in a fight. However, we're not dealing with prep time. We're dealing with kind of just what if they had to fight. And unfortunately, she's strong enough to kind of counteract a lot of his poisons. Just with her not medical knowledge alone, more than enough skilled enough swordsman, probably just as skilled Kido user as he is, Kaido user, and her Bankai probably would actually just destroy his Bankai, because his Bankai is another one that takes the form of an organic creature, and it's unclear whether or not his like liquid form he takes would be able to survive the acid that she creates with her Bankai. Ultimately, even though if he hit her, she would be paralyzed in certain parts. I think she probably has a resistance to certain poisons, so it's very likely she would circumvent that. And again, the zero, that Terror Magnitude number 4, where he sticks his finger in the eye and it paralyzes the individuals. I really don't think that would work unless you're stabbing the opponent, because that's what happened with Kenpachi, and Pernido wasn't paralyzed. So that that's I don't think that's how that works. I think you need to stab someone and then do it. Either way, Mayuri I do think loses to Unohana overall. Now we get to the last two, which are Ruki Akuchi and Kisuke Uehara. And these two were really hard to kind of figure out if they would win or if they'd lose. Because it's Uehara, obviously. Uehara is, Uehara for a reason. And ultimately, yeah, when it came to Uehara, it was a really tough choice, but ultimately, yeah, I think he would beat her in a fight. And it's because of how many backup plans, how many strategies, how much prep time, and just how much on-the-fly thinking and thinking ahead he does. Also, he's just much more versatile than Unohana is. She might be the better overall swordsman, but he's so versatile with his Benihime just in Shikai alone. And if you want to talk about a Kido master, he is a Kido master. He can do all the level Kidos, including level 99. I don't know if Unohana can do that. So it's one of those things where his genius, the fact that he's actually probably more skilled in hand-to-hand combat too, surprisingly. His genius, his overall skill, and the fact that he's extremely versatile, and Benihime would actually be giving Unohana, I think, a pretty good fight, would be the ultimate, would ultimately, I think, give Uehara the win. Bankai to Bankai would be difficult to really pinpoint, because I don't think she'd melt his doll, but I don't know if his doll could restructure him from being melted with acid. So, take that for what it's worth. But ultimately, then we had the last one, which was Rukia. And if I remember correctly, I do believe Rukia lost to Unohana. I think it's just one of those things where she'd overwhelm Rukia pretty early on. Her Kaido's enough that she could heal from any sort of damage the Shikai probably would do to her. And then her the Bankai to Bankai would be a little bit more difficult, admittedly. But at the same time, it would be one of those things where Unohana's smart enough to get out of the way before that Bankai activates. So that's where and she's got the experience to recognize that. So ultimately, I gave the win to Unohana on that. But that is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below if you think differently. If you do, that's cool. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that bell if you want notifications. If you have an idea for who would win Star Wars, Superior Magic, what if, anything to do in the channel, put that in the comments below. Thanks for watching, though. Hope you enjoyed. Again, I mentioned it in the who would win, but I'm not sure I'll do the what if today. I might just save it for tomorrow when I'm just a bit more free. I'm actually got to leave in a little bit to do a couple errands, so I'll be out for a little while. But I got the whole week. This is my vacation week, so which is me basically just sitting at home doing nothing for a good while, which I kind of need. So until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you folks next time. Later.